I'm Kaylee, and these are the top 10 nonfiction books that I've read in the last 10 years. I don't usually read a ton of nonfiction, but when I do, it's usually something that really has an impact on my life in some way. Either it gave me really good information, or inspired me to do some project, or it just changed my thinking about, some kind of philosophy or belief, or it taught me something about history. Nonfiction just has so much to offer. But before I get into the 10 favorite nonfiction that I've read in the last 10 years, I want to make sure that you know that Books for MKs is a charity that donates books to missionary kids. Today's MK shoutout goes to Sienna, who is 12 years old and lives with her family in Romania. Sienna loves ballet and poetry and history and fantasy. She loves to read. If you want to donate to Sienna and children like her, you can do so at GoFundMe.com. And don't forget to subscribe and click on that little notification bell. And without further ado, here are my top 10 nonfiction, not of all time, but just the ones that I've read in the last 10 years. These are in no particular order, so I'm just gonna jump right in. Right at the top, of course, I had to have C.S. Lewis somewhere. But my favorite of his that I've read for the first time in the last 10 years is The Great Divorce. This is the book that shows the great divide between heaven and hell. And it's kind of a dream that a person has, or almost like a vision of going to purgatory or to hell, and then they realize that all the people in hell chose to be there. They literally would rather be there than be anywhere else. They've so deceived themselves that they think that that's just the best that they can do, and they won't accept help from anybody. It's really an interesting look at the concepts and beliefs that we have about what it means to go somewhere when you die, to either go to heaven or hell when you pass away. And what are the choices in your life that led you there? C.S. Lewis, of course, is always completely mind-blowing and amazing and really makes you think about, why do I believe what I believe and where does that come from? So naturally, I had to have him on this list, of course. The next one is a biography of Bonhoeffer, pastor, martyr, prophet, spy. This one has made a big splash in Christian circles, of course, for the last 10 years, I guess, or whenever it was published. This is the true story of a Christian German man who is trying to save his beloved Germany from the Nazis. What's really interesting is it shows the gradual way that the Nazis took over Germany, and that their ideology gradually started to become more and more violent. And it shows how Bonhoeffer and other Christians, stood up to the Nazis and spied on them. And there was actually a plot that Bonhoeffer was involved in to assassinate Hitler, but it did not go well. And eventually Bonhoeffer was martyred just like a couple of months before World War II ended. But what's really so inspiring about this is not all of the World War II stories and the spying and the attempted assassinations and all of that. What's really inspiring is Bonhoeffer's strong spiritual faith. That's what kept him going through the difficulties that he went through. And that's what made him such an inspiration to other Christian Germans and Jewish Germans. It was very difficult to read because, of course, it's very sad and even upsetting and disturbing in places. But that incredibly strong faith just, it was so amazingly inspirational and just so good. And another book about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien together, my two favorite authors, I read The Hobbit, The Wardrobe, and The Great War. This one is about World War I, which at the time was called the Great War, and how both Lewis and Tolkien were affected by being down in the trenches and being affected by the warfare, and how those things influenced their writing later on. I really loved how this one goes in depth about their personal experiences in the Great War and how that shaped their faith, because both of them were Christians, and how that shaped their writing and just the way that they looked at the world and their beliefs and everything. So it really goes in depth into specific things in their books that, you know, those influences could be traced back to their experiences in the Great War. The next one is Anne Frank's Diary of a Young Girl. I seem to be sort of inadvertently grouping them together with all the world wars. This was such a depressing book to read. It is so beautiful, just this lovely little girl with these big thoughts and these big emotions in her heart, and it's just it's so shocking and upsetting, and I cried for days after I read this, but it's definitely memorable and I will never forget. The next book that I'm going to talk about is totally different from those first ones. It's the life-changing magic of tidying up. Wow, that is like I've been talking about war and serious spiritual faith and things, and all of a sudden, clean your house, tidying up. So yeah, that's a whole different ball game now. I read Marie Kondo's book, and I went through the the whole process of KonMariing my entire house, and I loved it. I don't agree with absolutely everything that she writes about, but I do like her approach of, being full of gratitude for the things that you have and choosing what you want to keep, not what you want to get rid of, and choosing things that truly enhance your life and bring you joy. I have to say though, after reading her book, and I read her second book and the manga that was published as well, I did not care for the TV show. The TV show just, I don't know what it was. It rubbed me the wrong way or something. Marie Kondo herself is lovely, and whenever she was on the scene, I liked the TV show. But something about just the way it was set up, maybe, or the way that it was filmed or something, it just didn't have that same kind of magic for me that the book did. This book is on this list because it really changed the way that I think about my possessions and that I think about the purpose of my home and the purpose of my possessions in my life. The next one is Yin Yoga, Stretch the Mindful Way. I have been doing yoga for many years, and I find that it really helps me to relieve stress because I have a lot of energy and I am very tightly wound, I have a lot of stuff going on and I get very tense. And so I need that, stretching, to just get rid of some of that tension and stress. And it helps me to quiet my mind as well. Which is why I love specifically Yin Yoga, because Yin Yoga isn't so much about like a workout and lots of movement. Yin Yoga is very still. So you get into a pose and you get into a stretch and you just sit there for 2 to 5 minutes, and it gives you a chance to really calm your mind down and get into kind of a meditative state where you can just sit quietly with your thoughts, which we do not do often enough. I really loved this book in particular because it gives very clear instructions with lots of really good pictures, and it shows you how you can make the pose a little tougher to stretch further, or you can make it a little easier if you don't want to stretch too much or overdo it that day. So it's really wonderful because it gives you a lot of options, and it's very educational. If you're not sure about yoga or you don't have an instructor, you could do Yin Yoga on your own because the instructions are so clear. The next one is Journal Me Organized. I've been doing a bullet journal for several years, and I've read several books about it and, looked it up on Pinterest and looked it up online and read articles about how to bullet journal. And I have to tell you, this is the very best bullet journal book that I have ever come across. There are so many awesome ideas in here, and you could have a very minimalistic bullet journal, or you could go all out with the paints and the markers and have a very artistic journal. This book has something for everybody in there. It shows different types of spreads, different types of lists that you can do, habit trackers, just everything that I ever wanted to inspire me to bullet journal. I found it in this book, I'm telling you. It's my bullet journal dream come true. The next one is a book titled Abortion, the Exploitation of Women. People talk about abortion as though it's, women's rights and women's liberation and stuff. But this book really took a closer look and examined the statistics of who is getting abortions and why they get abortions, and just it doesn't really go into a ton about the medical side or the science side of what constitutes life or what goes on during an actual procedure, but it actually talks about the women and their families and their situations, what caused them to want an abortion or what happens to them afterwards. And the statistics show, I was appalled. The statistics show that it's more of a tool to exploit women and even to enslave them in their choices instead of giving them a freedom to choose. So if you're just wondering about the abortion issue, or you feel like there's just a lot of conflicting information out there about how abortion is affecting our nation, this is a good book to read if you just want some more information, because I was absolutely shocked and appalled at how abortion is used, not to free women, but to exploit them. It's just horrible. The next one is The Sacred Romance. It's been several years since I read this, so I don't remember a ton of the specifics about it, but I do remember that it's about how, women want romance. On some level, I think men want romance too. But for women, this is something that's a very deep longing in our hearts. We want to be wooed. We want to be courted. We want to be romanced. This one, though, is about how God has placed those desires in our hearts, because truly, at the very core of us, at the very core of everybody, what we really are longing for is connection to God. So that's why it's called The Sacred Romance. It's all about how, Christ came down to earth to redeem us. And basically, all of history is Christ sort of wooing and courting humanity, searching for a deep connection with us. It's a really beautiful book. It really made me think differently about my relationship with God, not just my faith in God or my belief in, religious doctrine, but my actual relationship with a person who gave everything to have a relationship with me. Reading this book definitely deepened my faith and connection. I recommend it to everybody. You don't have to be a woman to read it. Like, men would find so much in this book that is really inspirational as well. And the last one that I'm going to talk about is Jesus the King by Timothy Keller. This one really goes in depth into the life of Christ and the history of Christianity, showing how Christ truly is King of the world. He is the creator, and he is the redeemer of the world, and he gave everything to save humanity. What's really amazing in this book is that the author goes into a lot of detail setting up the majesty and the glory of God and Christ in particular, and showing his power. And once you've got it in your mind just very clearly, like how far above us and how amazing and glorious Christ really is, then he says, and then he came down to be born as a lowly human, as a poor person. And then the impact of that really hits you. There's one chapter in particular that is why this book is on this list. And it's a chapter that talks about how God and Christ exists outside of time. And so God came down to be born inside of time at a specific point in time. And God also exists without a body. He is a spirit, because the Bible says that those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So God went from being just a spirit to being born inside a body. I can't really explain it very well because the book explains it so beautifully, just so amazingly. When I read that chapter, I actually got chills. Like, I actually started to go pale or something, just realizing the magnitude of what Christ did when he came down to be born as a baby and to die for us. It's truly amazing writing that can take these big, huge, cosmic ideas that I can't even wrap my mind around that, but it explains it in such simple and concise language that I can understand it and I can appreciate the majesty and beauty of it. And that is why Jesus the King is on this list. And those are my top 10 favorite nonfiction that I've read in the last 10 years. Please leave me a comment down below and let me know, what is your favorite nonfiction that you've read recently? I mean, recently, like in the last 10 years recently. What's your favorite and why is it your favorite? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and remember, the right book in the right hands at the right time can change the world.